Hello everyone, welcome to For the Love of Weather podcast. Today is Weather Wednesday, which means that it's time for a new episode. My name is Gemma.
Whoop whoop. My name is Ashley. I'm super excited. It's Weather Wednesday. Gemma's got a big bump in her head and I haven't slept since 2:30 a.m. So
it's a little bit sore.
It is. So our guest today is in for a bit of a bumpy ride. So we're going to apologize in advance. Actually, speaking of which, our guest today is our gorgeous friend, Chris. Now, Chris has many skills that I don't have. Gemma, I know you don't have them, but Chris...
I don't have them, no.
He's able to program. He's one of these people. He programs the weather. Like, this is just a whole other level of stuff. I look at things and make stuff up, but, you know, Chris actually manages to program the weather, but his actual area of expertise is the insurance industry, which is so incredibly interesting, particularly as more and more as we're going forward. People are trying to plan against flooding and climate change, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff about the insurance industry that existed way before all of that. And Chris is going to tell us all about it today. You are very welcome, Chris, to our podcast.
Hi, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Sorry. Hope I sound okay. That's the main thing. My partner always says that I put on like a special voice whenever I'm doing a meteorological call. Mm-hmm. So my voice kind of changes. I don't know if you guys find that.
We want a special voice because the weather is special. I mean,
you sound normal to me. You sound like normal to me.
But like, we basically have three massive weather geeks here, so we probably all have a bit of a special voice for weather. So
yeah,
it's the excited. I've suddenly woken up and we're getting to talk about weather, which is just amazing.
It's like this. Yeah, it's like the telephone voice because we're so used to. I don't know, you guys. You know, for most of our jobs, we're talking to people all across the country on the telephone. You kind of like switch on and you become a little bit more like presentery, talking about the weather.
I do have a telephone voice, but I'm listening back to these podcasts. I know that the telephone voice does not last the podcast.
That's
my normal voice. I can't keep up.
It's so true. Gosh, it's so true. But the love is in the voice. We can feel the love from everybody chatting about the weather once we start digging and find out why they really love it. It's the best part.
Yeah, you kind of get your little twinkle, little kind of like spark whenever you just mention something meteorological.
Yeah.
Just kind of lifts you up and you kind of just sounds a little bit more cheerful than my normal kind of phone calls or normal kind of talking during the day. Once you start talking about the weather, it just makes you feel a bit better, right?
I know, because it's the best thing ever. And also, I'd be massively insulted, Chris, if you didn't have a bit of a sparkle in your voice. You know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying, you know, you're on this podcast, we're talking about the weather. The world's a good place. Gemma banged her head. I haven't slept. It's all good.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Chris, we've been talking quite a lot there, but we actually know each other for quite a number of years. And we've all at one point had a career in the same place. And we've all have different expertise in different things. But Chris, you have gone down a road of insurance forecasting. But before we even get there, the best thing I'd love to know is, when was that first little spark of, I'm going to get a job in the weather? I'm not sure what that means, but that's what I'm going to do. Take us back.
Oh, I had to go back quite a long time or so. I think my love of weather generally same as pretty for everyone, that I kind of grew up in Rutland in quite a kind of rural kind of community, and it's not really much stuff to do in Rutland. So you spend a lot of your time outside. I spent a lot of time when I was a kid, you know, out in the garden playing. When you spend a lot of time outside, you just kind of see the weather coming in. That's how I remember it as a child. Rutland's quite a magical place for weather, actually, and we were quite lucky where I grew up. We were kind of like just on the edge of this valley, so you had the whole of the valley across us. You can see quite a large panoramic view from our garden. So you can actually, particularly in like summer, we get some pretty impressive kind of thunderstorms developing in Rutland. You know, being in the centre of the country, that's where thunderstorms in the summer like form, either there or kind of, if you got down in France. I know quite a few of our friends like have the same kind of thing that growing up on like the south coast. You kind of can see the storms coming in. I think I kind of had that same experience of kind of, you look out, you just see it, and you can kind of see the weather, and you can see that kind of connection to kind of nature and the environment. I was then at school, I was always quite kind of maths and physics, and you want to go down the kind of science kind of route. But I think I wanted some kind of use of it. Didn't really want to go into kind of theoretical or kind of just like pure numbers of maths are just coming out, oh, x equals 5, every day. Or with the weather, every day, what you're doing and producing is kind of like, you can see the results. You can go outside and see what your forecast was like.
So that's the thing though. What you're just said there is that actually for a lot of people the weather is just maybe the weather on the telly, but that doesn't go into details about like cloud height, cloud depth, the more complicated things that you might really want to know about. So tell us about the insurance industry. Give us if I give me an elevator pitch of what is the insurance industry all about.
So the insurance industry is this kind of massive kind of market, and it has so many different fields. Like you said before, it's really into every kind of aspect, and every kind of aspect of the weather is kind of used within the insurance industry itself. So our kind of basic kind of products, if you think about it, that and the main kind of introduction to people for having into the insurance industry is when you get weather damage in your house. So if your house floods, or you get wind damage, you get a strong windstorm coming across. So one of the things that we do or we provide in the insurance industry is the kind of the data behind that. So when you ring up, you got some damage to your house, or your house has been flooded, you ring up your insurer. They will then use our tools, use our data we've provided to it. You can talk to them, and they can actually tell whether the weather at your location was enough for them to pay the claim. As always, as you can imagine, that it's down to the insurer whether they pay it more than just our tools. It's always down to your insurer whether they pay the kind of price itself as you want. But what's quite interesting is, I don't know if you know this, or people that view it in the people used to us, the kind of in the weather industry, is just how few kind of weather observations there are across the country. How can you actually define down to someone's house how strong the wind gust was that strong enough to kind of produce kind of damage? Is enough for our insurance to pay? So we're always in kind of constant communication with our clients, with the insurance industry, saying, what's the threshold if you pay for an event, what's not going to be an event itself, where can we get better data in so that they can kind of accept the claim but also reject the claim as well.
Does it work the other way though? So do you provide information to the insurance companies about events that may come? So the insurance companies come to you and say, look, this has happened, we have this claim, help us out with that. But what about the other way? How important is that to actually be providing continuous forecasts regardless of extreme weather events? So tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, exactly. I think what our clients want to know, and particularly what's strong with insurance clients and what our clients like to do, is they always like to provide the best customer service. They want to know if an event's going to occur. They want to know how many people are going to be ringing up their call centers, because they want, you as an insurance customer, you don't really deal with your insurance, or at least I don't, you don't deal with your insurance company all the time, do you? It's not like a weekly, monthly thing. You only going to probably claim on your house insurance a few times, but your loyalty of paying it every year. So what they want is when you've got a claim or you've got a problem, you can ring up, you get through to someone straight away. So they want to know when a major event is going to be occurring.
Okay.
So,
and do you look at return periods as well? So if we've had like a really big windstorm, would your company come to you and say, okay, we've had this big windstorm, how likely are we to see those in the next few years, so they can prepare for that as well?
That's something slightly different. I can probably get onto that, another aspect of the insurance, Gem, return periods. So what we then will produce is, we'll actually, for our forecast, we won't just say, here's a major storm. We won't even say, here's a major storm, here's the peak wind gusts. What we do is we basically don't tell the insurance companies anything about the weather. All we tell them, basically, their bottom line is how many calls they're going to have. So we'll bring up the company and say, there's a major storm coming through, say on Saturday, and this is the number of calls you're going to have. from that period. They've then got complicated matrices. They know when people are likely to call. They then know what structures, who to call in, when to not. So for us, yeah, we're a weather forecasting company, but if anything, we are an impact forecasting company. So
it's clever that you can work out how many calls that they're going to have. That's very clever that you can do that.
yeah, so that often that is based on the kind of like one of the aspects is the return period of say a wind event or a rain event. Something slightly different. So we looked at and we know, and we've got complicated models that do this, but basically as you can imagine, if you get a windstorm that's got 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts, but if it's occurring across somewhere, let's say Cornwall or the Shetland Islands, they get that quite regularly, and the houses built. If they weren't, they would have gone. Whereas some other places, big East, Norwich or so, randomly, you had the same amount of wind across the same number of properties, you're going to get much more kind of claims. Kind of,
and that can depend as well on the time of year.
Definitely. So again, for us, as we know, main thing, winter windstorm season, which is particularly things occurring in September or so, September to March, that's when they're kind of the large normal kind of period. But we've noticed over the last couple of years, we are starting to get earlier and earlier storms. If you think about this year particularly, we had 2 named storms for the UK in August. So they even got counted in technically in last year's names before this year. So as you can imagine, things like obviously in August you got a lot more trees in full leaf, so that they're more likely to come down and fall. Just as well, people are about. We've had it before. We've had get a lot more like temporary structures, kind of thing, like large tents, large marquees set up for the summer. If you get these early storms, that's more kind of impacted in from
do
it.
You ever look at I was going to say, do you ever look at thunderstorms as well, or is that not something that you would look at? Because obviously, if you got a really a big cluster of thunderstorms coming up that gave you really frequent lightning. I remember doing a shift once when the lightning was just everywhere. It was absolutely crazy. But do you ever get, would you ever have to sort of forecast for that sort of thing?
We forecast for that, and then we try and forecast the impact. We forecast the number of so we basically cover, for the main ones is what you're basically getting insured about. So we'll mostly cover wind, we cover flood, or what we call sustained flood, but kind of river-based flooding. Kind of you put it in the river, kind of bursts its bank, you come through. We also look at kind of surface water flooding, which is the main kind of impact in this country, I would say, from thunderstorms, which can happen anywhere really. That's where just get a lot of things. You get a lot in London, particularly around by me. You think about it, just go huge kind of downpour of rain, and particularly we've noticed the last couple of years, people aren't necessarily cleaning the drains anymore. There's a lot more leaf. Drains are getting full up and people are getting flooded. I know that from us, just talking about thing, I live on the top of a hill next to a kind of Chinese takeaway, and if you were trying to model it, high resolution hydraulical model, you go, well, this would never flood, it's just going to run down the high street. The drain outside of it fell, massive thunderstorm, all flooded in into the shops. Someplace you couldn't go. So again, it's trying to take that thing from it. We also do freeze is a large impact, things like burst pipes. So we can forecast the number of burst pipe claims that are going to occur. And again, with that, remember with the freeze is you can get it for a long time, build up, but it's when you get the thaw that actually claims come in. So it's sometimes not necessarily forecasting the freeze conditions, and sometimes as well for us, not necessarily forecasting the actual impact, but one of these impacts going to be. It's
very varied. It sounds interesting.
It is.
So recently, I think 2015 was the first year the Met Office had started a storm naming convention, where the public get to name the storms. Does that impact your industry? Does it raise awareness levels?
Well, we've actually, in the insurance industry, we use the German system, or particularly the large insurance companies, we use the German naming system.
Why is that?
So for a lot of our reinsurance ones, so Name Berlin, which has been naming pretty much every single low pressure and high pressure back to the 1950s. So we have to, as a company, I have to name a storm, the German name, and then if it gets named by the Met Office, then we have to name that. And then also if it's named by the new, like Spain, is it Portugal and France kind of conglomerate, if they name the system, then it will come second. But typically for the insurance industry, it's the German name will be the main name that's given to it first.
Why is that? Is that just because of the historical data that you have associated with that, or is it that the insurance companies are largely European based?
Or is it just because they've been naming the storms longer?
They've been naming the storms longer. It's as simple as that.
It's
particularly if you think about it, this is the German naming system, I must say, is more used for our kind of the reinsurance market. So that's where, you know, I said earlier, of like, the kind of return period. Reinsurance, which is roughly kind of thinking about kind of like insuring the insurers. You kind of like looking at what kind of impact. So these are the people with insurance companies that want to know about climate change. How impactful is this wind system? Are we going to get more windstorms going forward? What's this season going to look like? So they look at kind of like longer term and only really interested in the really large events of how that's going to change pricing for insurance across the whole market.
I was just going to say, it's worth explaining to people that might not know that storms get named by different countries. They might not know that. If they listen to this, they might not know that. So in the UK, we might have a storm Alex, but that low pressure system that's moved up from Spain that brings us that unsettled weather might be named something different by someone else. So it's worth mentioning that to people.
Which is why the storm naming centres now adopt the name of the storm from the other storm
try and make it a bit more straightforward.
So we've got the Northern Storm Centre, which is Republic of Ireland, the UK, and the Netherlands. And the southern one is Portugal, Spain, France, and Belgium. So if they name one first, we adopt that name.
Yeah, I still get confused now when they name something. I'm like, which name are we using? Are we using this name or that name? Or if it's a hurricane that's come over and it's the remnants, are we using that name?
Ophelia, I know.
Oh, it's so confusing sometimes.
It's handy for Googling, though. It just, it does make it easier actually to identify systems. I like them. I like them. I do like them.
And it does mean also, as I say, that if you're trying to get warning out to people via social media, you use the hashtag, and it means that people are able to see that information very, very quickly, and you can get them to take note of what's going on, strong winds, heavy rain. So it is very useful.
It's really interesting actually, like your take on like a storm in August with everything in full leaf, and someone else take with the storm in August and everything full. So that storm would happen, and then in media we'd have, like, I guess it may last for a day or so. Hopefully it's not particularly a bad storm, but for you, that's when your work starts, where for some of the media, that's where the work finishes.
Yeah, for us, we're almost a complete picture, and actually it's pretty incredible. We will start forecasting the same as everyone else, as early as we can. We do seasonal forecast into that kind of longer mid-range, 10 to 5 days, giving people heads up, and then we're fully working on it for 5 days. The storm will occur, then that's when we'll kick in and we'll show our observations. And then if it's a big storm, things with insurance companies, it can take years, and we have people coming back and checking our tool years afterwards and looking back through that system. So I get a lot of people ringing up saying, can you look at this storm, this claim in particularly if it's a massive, a really big claim coming in, it can take years and years and years for these things to go on. And it's amazing because we provide the tool as well, which is quite interesting. So I have on my desktop on a day, I can see where people are making weather checks. So we can see where a call handler can view up and is making a check on what weather and what periods. So actually, I feel like sometimes we, in real time, we can actually see what impacts are happening from the weather more than, almost as much as anyone else in, one central location, particularly for things like thunderstorms. It's quite useful. You can see, and you can just start to see these bobbles. You can see on the radar, big storm coming through, and then
you start seeing the calls popping up.
Minutes later, you can start to see people calling in, and it often can pick up, and it can actually even show you with that, because we've got eyes on the ground. Everyone who's got an insurance person will maybe make a call. So sometimes the media will go, and there'll be one big storm. They'll be all talking about that, but we just see a little pocket somewhere else that we've got, major event, big flooding on one occasion. But you start to see another pocket, and you suddenly go, oh look, we should have looked at this. There's a secondary line. There's a very small storm just
You get
happened
that
to go
immediate
through.
verification of what's going on by people
Yeah.
phoning in.
So
I would
it's
just
quite good to be
like to say I have never experienced a Spanish plume event here for all the years I have been here. So in the UK, probably one of the bigger causes of thunderstorms in the summer, at least, is something called a Spanish plume event. And I have yet to see one. They're very obvious on the satellite and radar, but they're incredibly hazardous. I mean, beautiful from a meteorological perspective, but actually incredibly hazardous to the public and people on the ground. And it is one of those situations where you do get that flash flooding. Like, things happen quickly. Things happen really, really quickly with water. And it can be, certainly, even the highest resolution models can surprise you with what actually happens. It's very hard to know the exact kind of inner workings of a thunderstorm. I mean, you can see it in 5 minutes or so, but actually modeling it's incredibly complicated. It kind of puts it into context how advanced some of the tools are that you have in the insurance industry.
Yeah, it's amazing actually. If you look on a kind of a daily view, or particularly like say in this country, and I've not done anything too much in the States or whatever, but it can just matters where exactly the thunderstorms form can have a huge difference on the impact. So we can have 2 days of a Spanish plume. So from a meteorological point of view, they look exactly the same, forming up, coming in and in close. And if the storm, say, fell over central London, huge, like hundreds and thousands of claims coming in per insurance across the whole market. Next day, exactly the same issue, and it can just form maybe 20 miles, just slightly further north, just priced into kind of maybe Cambridgeshire, nothing else, and you'll see no activity. So as a forecaster, you've gone, well, these are the same days. Can look at it in, but the impact on the ground. So again, we're always trying to look to improve our as well, our communication. But as you can imagine, at the moment, it's still to get that resolution to know exactly where the strongest storms are going to be is not.
It's definitely worth as well just talking about, like, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, a 20-mile difference in the complexity of actually modeling the atmosphere is nothing on a global scale. But if you happen to be living 20 miles south in a busy urban area, or it's 20 miles north, that is absolutely massive. And that is the difference for somebody on the ground saying that forecast was right, that forecast was wrong. But looking at it from a slightly more macro point of view, that was incredibly accurate, that you actually, got that correct. But yeah, it just goes to show how wonderful the weather is. And it's pretty amazing that we still have so much of a journey to go in terms of that smaller scale resolution of modeling, which is why insurance is incredibly complicated.
I think this is where, again, I think I'm quite lucky, or I quite enjoy my job, because I think we work on the kind of macro level. I think this is where we're kind of our uniqueness particularly as a company and with insurance is that kind of macro. It's looking at each individual event, but trying to be able to sum them up to give the kind of impact across the whole of the country. So it's not like a TV forecast, where you've got like 60 seconds to describe the weather across the UK for the next week, and you're not say you're painting it with broad brushes, or you're going, here's the storms, here's where it's going on. It's not the kind of forecasting, say, down for like a wind farm or a crane, where it's just like one location, it either hits or it doesn't. For us, we're kind of having to bridge the gap between the two and go, what's the likelihood of it happening at each one of our important locations? It becomes very kind of almost statistical and probabilistic across it, for us to generally try and get at what the actual total impact will be at the end.
And it's a different forecasting as well, isn't it? Because obviously TV broadcasting is an overview, whereas if you're on a wind farm, you want to know there's a thunderstorm, but you want to know how frequent is that lightning going to be? Is it going to be one strike, or is it going to be one of those storms that just gives you continuous strikes of lightning? If that case, the likelihood is you're going to have to shut down production on it or whatever. So that's another difference as well.
And equally as well, if it's too windy, you have to shut your wind farm down, which sounds it's kind of ironic in the nature of it, but it's actually very dangerous to have it too windy and have your turbines going around. Just worth mentioning as well, actually, a Spanish plume event normally occurs here in the summertime, and it's about heat. Well, there's sort of 3 elements to it. You need a sort of a drier layer coming from Africa, and that sits over a layer across the continent. And as that layer pushes northwards. So it's probably you've got like, you at least 24 hours of this actually happening to establish the setup of it. But basically the heat gets so hot during the day, eventually you get something the lid gets popped on it, and you get these incredible storms that are created. They travel across the channel, they pick up moisture there as well, and that's what a Spanish plume event is. Just all I'd say.
That's an extra weather wisdom for everyone there.
Yeah. So if it's wrong, it wasn't wisdom. Something like that. Something like that.
So I was going to say, so in your job, Chris, you're able to do forecasting, but you also do modeling as well. You build the models as well for your job?
So again, we've talked a little bit about how we do the kind of impact kind of modeling. So I kind of help with the development of that themselves. Recently, I've been doing a lot about kind of developing and getting direct model output and getting it in kind of an easier format to understand for a forecaster in the morning. I think from a meteorologist point of view, there's almost too much data out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's, the ensembles of ensembles of ensembles.
And, as forecasters, we have very little times in the mornings. And it's always ridiculously early in the morning. You have to get up to look what's going on and be able to kind of sum the weather up quickly and easily. And again, like I said, sum the weather up from an impact point of view to get those figures and those things in it. So I do take direct model output, look at the differences, can start doing things with return periods, but also just kind of show a suite of ensembles together and go, what is the key factor we're most interested in? What can we view that? Can we view that easier? Can we make this almost give some kind of machine learning within the system itself, so it can kind of pick up and go, this is interesting, we can look at this in more detail going forward, so that as a forecaster we can see where the models are consistent, where they're not consistent, where is the areas of uncertainty.
God,
you're kind of macro level.
You're reminding me of the stress of the tiny forecasting detail that and the technicalities of forecasting. And actually, it's hard. It's hard. It's challenging, and it does bear. It's a responsibility that that you carry. There's so many different jobs, and we've all done very different jobs as well in forecasting. It's gosh, some days are tough going, which brings me on to Chris. What is your favorite part about the job?
Okay, now this is going to feel like I'm pandering, but it's definitely the people. It's definitely the weather community. And
I love this. Keep going.
But I feel like we said, we talk about it and it's a really complicated job and it's a really thing, but I feel like it's a field that you only get into if you truly love. No one kind of, like I said, everyone you meet within the field, no matter what they do, whatever kind of forecasting they do, you can go and you can just go, right, let's talk about the weather. And everyone loves it, and everyone loves it. Absolutely. It's almost like a core feature of their personality is they love the weather. It's almost like you love the weather first, and then you find a job that you could do on it. And I don't know, there's not many other jobs, and my friends that do lots of other things and talk about it, but I still don't know another kind of real job that like almost every single person you meet just really loves that aspect of it. So kind of talk through it. And the other thing is, the second thing is, it is impossible to be a one-man band with meteorology. It has to be a teamwork. You can't. It's kind of humanly not possible for one person to be on top of all of the weather across the whole of the globe all the time, 24/7. You can't. It's every single model. There's so much data, things out there. You have to work with other people. You have to communicate. You have to develop and move new kind of aspects forward.
You need to understand as well so forecasting or meteorology or atmospheric physics has a language to it, and you really need to understand that language of the person that you're talking to and how they visualize what's happening in the atmosphere, the physics of what they're actually looking at, and that gets translated into another language. And everyone has a slightly subtle different thing that they look at, or they have favorite things that they look at. Some people love I don't know, working with, dry bulbs, wet bulbs, whichever it is that you want. Like everyone has their little thing that they go to, their little nuggets that they try and pick out. So
Yeah,
we
if
have
they're
to
trying
merge
to
all that
forecast,
together.
yeah,
Yeah.
if they're trying to forecast one part of the weather, they might have certain elements that they'll look at, whereas someone else
Techniques.
might look at something else. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a few up my sleeve that I
Yeah.
used when it comes to certain things.
We must
Yeah,
get
I
them
was like
out of
that.
you, Gemma.
No. Certain things I do when I'm doing snow forecasting. So
Oh my
seems to work so
gosh.
far. So it seems to work so far. So
Oh.
keeping them under my sleeve.
Wet snow. Why? Anyway.
Oh, see, my secret is that I don't know anything. So we like insurance, we don't really matter too much about snow, which is great. Mostly it's freezing, the cold temperatures. But I do remember when I was working in the same company as Gemma that I was like, is it worth me kind of learning all these like snow tricks? I'll just go and ask Gemma. So instead of having to learn it, the secret
That's
is
very
she
kind.
make a really good cup of tea, and I just go, oh Gemma, make you a
Yeah.
cup of tea. What do you think
And
the
I'll
snow
just do the
height's going to
snow
be?
forecasting for you.
And yeah, Gemma
Oh,
will be like, oh,
okay.
cup of tea. Here you go. Here we go. 100 meters and
But
stuff. So
see,
I think
Chris, that is a really important tool right there. So, Gemma was the tool in that case. And you didn't have to
exactly.
program it. You just needed a cup of tea. Even better.
Just a cup of tea.
It's true. Cup
Okay,
of tea on a night shift, and I'll do the snow forecasting for you.
And it
Yeah.
turns chocolate orange.
Oh, and a save
Oh,
with chocolate
cherries,
orange, of
chocolate
course.
orange.
So, Chris, you said like, okay, so we know you love the weather, and you absolutely cannot do the hours that you do as well either without actually loving the weather. What was your worst forecasting shift? Do you have one or a forecast that you wrote or something that was just like, oh, like stayed with you? Sometimes you get every now and then you get a forecast and it stays with you. It was terrible.
Yeah, I'm pleased you put like forecasting shift because I thought the question was going to be what's your worst ever forecast? Tell me when you get
No,
completely
like
wrong.
I mean, just one of those days, where it takes you a couple of shifts to shrug it off, how that it just didn't, nothing was.
No, I was going to say what's kind of quite weird for me. I was thinking about this beforehand that I feel like my worst ever shift is potentially my like best ever shift as well. It's kind of quite weird, but I remember it was like a couple of years ago. I was on night shifts as it's always worst things always happen at night. And we were down, there was meant to be 3 of us on, and someone at the last minute was sick. So we went down to 2 people. So we were down a third of the people that were meant to be on. It was then New Year's Eve. So it was, so meant to be bringing in the new year. And we started at 8 o'clock, and at 8:30, the very top of Scotland started to go wrong. So we had to start ringing up the whole of Scotland, just the 2 of us. We had nothing else to do.
God.
Had to ring up 8:30, and then 9 o'clock, the middle of Scotland started to go wrong. So we had to ring up. And every half an hour, it just got getting worse and getting worse. And if you know anything about Scotland on New Year's Eve, it is just one massive party. So I was having to ring up people, and I swear that every single one of them was at like this massive Kaylee party. So I had all this like music, and so I get up, like ring ding ding hello, and there'd be some either Kaylee band or some like 1970s classics coming through. I'm thinking, and I just get this, sorry, can I just take this somewhere else, get put on hold, and then hi, how's it going, and I have to explain what's wrong. And I spent the whole night, literally just went through almost every half an hour just going across. And I think as a 2 we rang the whole of the country by, I think it was about 6 o'clock in the morning was the last one. That's when Kent started to go wrong, and we rang Kent, and we literally the 2 of us went through trying to arrange things around. We gave ourselves, because it was New Year's Eve, we gave ourselves 2 minutes off. We didn't make any phone calls for 2 minutes, and we enjoyed 1 minute before midnight and 1 minute after midnight, and the rest of the time was just solid.
Oh, Chris, you're amazing.
Absolutely, just solid work.
Also,
We need to explain,
I've got anxiety listening to that story. It's just bad memories.
I know, and we need to explain that when Chris says things were going wrong, he was doing
Yeah.
road forecasting. So it was going colder. The people had to go out and grit the
Or
roads.
there was more
to avoid-
cloud, or
Yeah.
it dropped a half degree and it was snow instead of rain, or freezing.
So that's what was going on.
Crazy.
Yeah, so
And it's
Not really good.
horrible when that happens and you could just see it going down the country. And you're
I
like,
know. You're
I
like,
just got to
why?
phone everyone.
why
Just
is
keep
that-
going. Just keep going.
That progress
Okay,
hasn't bounced back up again. And there's
I
a
know.
clear slot and it's going to freeze. And oh, the stress.
And
Oh,
I think it was so
well
cold.
done,
It was
you.
one where we had like a different wave. I don't know if you ever had it. It's like goes colder and then it goes so colder. You've got to like wing them back again and be
Oh,
like,
because of
it's still
extra
cold.
frost.
Yeah, extra frost. So
Yeah.
it was almost like another wave that came through. Well, the best thing is we then finished, the two of us, and our good friend Rach came in and had gotten us 3 bottles of Prosecco for like, because we were on over the night
Of course
thing.
she did.
And because there was only 2 of us, we drank one. So I drank 1.5 bottles of Prosecco
Yeah.
Good on you.
on like at 8 o'clock in the morning, just after the shift in
Oh.
Victoria in London, and it was really cold. And
God.
yeah, we
Chris.
just
You always used to have that after night shifts because obviously we would all do night shifts together and people
Yeah.
would go off for breakfast afterwards and sometimes have a pint. And you'd end a night shift thinking, well, technically, this is my 8 p.m. in the evening.
Yeah.
Is it wrong to have a
Yeah.
alcoholic drink or is that allowed? Because technically it's my evening, but it's everyone else's morning. The social dilemmas that you go through at the end of a night shift.
Oh God, I was always straight back to bed. I think most of it, maybe a breakfast actually, maybe a breakfast. But
I did an all-you-can-eat buffet once.
oh,
It was
did you
great,
manage to
but-
eat a lot?
I ate a lot. I was very hungry, but then
Mm.
I was just so tired, so I used to just go home straight afterwards. But an all-you-can-eat buffet,
But
some
you
hash
have-
browns, beans, lovely.
Oh, lovely.
After a night
You
shift.
have the magical ability of the sleep during the day, Jean, the sparkle, the whatever that magic is. That's just
I am very lucky. I can
Yeah.
sleep.
yeah. Well,
I used to feel bad when I'd come into shifts with reviews, and you'd be like, "How much sleep did you get?" Oh, I only did
12
7.5 hours, and you're like, "Well, I only slept 4 hours today."
so
If I
Chris,
get less than 7 hours, I'm like, "Oh, that's bad going between night shifts."
Oh
yeah, I
my
remember you saying that
goodness.
once. I remember coming in for a shift. I think I'd had about 2, maybe 3 hours, and Gemma came in and she was like, "Oh, I've had the worst sleep. I'm not going to be great tonight. I've had like 7.5 hours. It's not enough for me." And I was like,
And it isn't
"I've
enough
not
for
slept
me.
enough."
Oh
And
my goodness. Oh. Do you know what? Actually, speaking of Rach, I do remember she handheld me through my first snow shift on roads. I will never forget that. I think she basically wrote all of my forecasts for me and was like, "This is
Oh,
a
bless
forecast snow." I was saying. Oh, I have a lot to thank her for. So, Chris, quick fire round for you. Gemma has some questions for you. Most important. This is like the most important part of the whole podcast.
It is. This is where we really find out
no
what
pressure.
what makes Chris Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Favorite season?
Ooh, spring.
Why?
Oh, okay.
What?
Why?
Is there follow-up questions in the speed round?
No, this was a follow-up question.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sorry, I've just interjected there. I'm just curious. Why is it spring? Sorry. We'll continue in a minute.
I think probably now it's like the end of winter. It's like,
Okay.
I was thinking about this today, like all of my other friends, all my things, don't know when this is coming out, but it's like, it's the end of the year and everyone's going like, oh, it's start of a new year. Everyone's company's like, right, we finished this year. What we got planned for this year?
Mm,
For us, we're like halfway through our busiest period, if not going into
know.
busiest. So it's like right at the peak. So for us, yeah, we're more kind of that spring feels like a new kind of time.
Yeah.
It's quite nice if you've had, I remember like last winter or like January and February and March, it was just storm after storm after storm.
mm.
And then the first kind of like spring comes, you get that first, if you get the first high pressure and it's there for a week and you don't need to worry about the weather.
The
from an
first
insurance point of
little
view for a week. Yeah.
tinkle of sunshine on your skin. When
Yeah.
you're like,
And you can
"Oh,
go outside,
what is
you've
that?"
got some time, you're not stuck at your laptop trying to like
Yeah.
forecast. Just get that first kind of like heat of the sun as well. I quite like that
Yeah.
when you've had that cold and you first feel the sun on you. Spring. So I'm sorry.
That was a great answer. But that was a great answer. It's not.
No, I
a great
think Ash
answer.
said
It's my
spring.
favorite one
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
see,
It's my
this-
second favorite.
My friends always say that I'm a bit like Olaf. I don't know if you guys have seen Frozen.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I'm basically like a snowman, and my whole job is like winter and cold and things.
Yeah.
But all I do is I dream about summer, and, I'll be there. And I have no concept of what's actually going to happen in summer. But I'm just
Oh.
that's my thing. I spend my whole time in winter, wishing it was spring. So
I
yeah,
love
sometimes call me
Olaf.
Ola.
I'm going to change your name in my phone to Olaf now.
Yeah, we're just gonna have to call you Olaf, Chris. Okay, I interrupted the quick fire round. Continue.
It's absolutely fine. I can't guarantee that there won't be follow-up questions to the rest of these, Chris.
Yeah.
Favorite cloud?
Nimbostratus.
Ooh.
Absolutely. I remember, this is the exciting life that me and Gemma have. We went to the Cloud Society talk?
Oh, we did go to the
And then we queued up for ages to get our book signed from the head of the Cloud Society. And I went, why was there no stratus cloud, particularly nimbostratus, in the whole of this talk? So I feel like the whole weather.
Did Gavin give it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
and there wasn't a single stratus cloud. Everyone likes cumulo. If you like cumulonimbus, everyone's like these fancy, unique clouds. Or
he might take it on board, and in the next one have one of those included for you.
Yeah, he should do. Also, cumulonimbus cloud is code CB9, which is where on cloud 9 comes from, because it is the tallest cloud in the sky, discounting stratospheric clouds, of course, but in the actual our weather atmosphere. Yeah, lovely. I like that one. These are
the
good
answers.
I am, haven't I?
I still feel back to nimbus. I feel like it's such a British cloud. I feel like you get just like that grey, one colour across the sky, nothing going on. It just feels like home to me.
You're dead right. You don't see as many pictures of nimbostratus clouds. I recently did something on clouds myself, actually, and I struggled to find pictures of nimbostratus cloud. It is becoming the elusive cloud.
Chris will have photos. He sent me a photo once of a nimbostratus cloud.
I am tempted. We'll see what happens. I am tempted to make up the boring weather society.
Of clouds.
Of clouds.
I will be the head of that. Thanks very much. There's not a cloud I don't love or identify. When I see it, I'm like, oh, that's a lovely example of that. Oh, that's lovely. Oh, I know what's going to happen. Clouds are the best. They're the best.
Yeah,
it's going to be the clouds that are underrepresented.
Underrepresented clouds. There you go. The nimbus.
Well, I need to be part of this as well.
It is a very
given the name.
Very British
for the group
cloud. That's true. I love it, Gemma. We'll copyright that one. Don't worry.
We'll get onto it.
I think cumulohumus, is it cumulohumus? Is my favorite word to say, even though I can't really pronounce it very well. Kind of fair weather cloud.
Mm-hmm. What, cumulus or cumulonimbus? Cumulonimbus, the thunderstorm cloud.
Cumulus.
Oh, cumulus. They are the best because you can, like, it on any one day, depending on what time that cumulus develops, just gives you such insight into what's actually going to happen to the day, how quickly it grows, whether it grows or not. Does it start to flatten out and turn into a stratocumulus cloud, or does it build into something else, or is this just a little cumulus luminous that popped along before your weather front comes along? I love the cumulus luminous.
It's a great name as well.
The acorn of the cloud world.
Oh, that's so lovely. It's very poetic. That's lovely, Chris. That really cheered me up.
Okay, back to the quick fire.
Sorry, this is a great conversation.
Rein it in. Okay, custard creams or bourbons?
Bourbons.
For the record, I'm looking
They're
at Chris's face on Zoom, and it just dropped open. Like there was a moment of like, oh, I don't know.
What do I choose?
I don't know. And then I remember that bourbons was one of the favourite kind of snacks on shifts.
Yeah, they remind me of Gemma.
I think I probably used to like custard creams. Then I became a meteorologist, and bourbons seem to be more popular in.
They're great on a night shift.
Slowly.
Although the packets don't open great if you get a double packet, if it's not in a single file.
That is true, actually.
Yeah.
And also, I'm one of those people that I have to eat them in pairs. So I can never just eat one or three. It has to be an even number because I can't leave one on its own in the packet.
This is fascinating. What?
But it might be more because that one on its own is likely to fall out, whereas the two together keep them in place.
Do you know what's really interesting? I naturally I know.
Yeah.
Gemma's doing fantastic hand movements
on Zoom, just showing everyone how they stay together.
Do you naturally gravitate towards even numbers? I would naturally gravitate towards odd numbers. Like I would never, if I went swimming, I would never put my stuff in a locker that was an even number. ever.
See, I naturally gravitate towards even numbers. Yeah, I do.
Oh, I'm the opposite.
But I mean, the Bourbons is more to do with the fact is I don't like leaving one on its own because it
might be
falls out.
lonely.
Whereas it's true, and then together they stay. If you have a pet company, they stay together in the little line.
In my belly.
And also, it's an extra one for me to eat, and probably the main reason, isn't it?
For sure. Chris, are you gravitate towards odd or even numbers?
I think if I gravitate anything, I'll probably gravitate like towards prime numbers. If I have, if I suddenly have something, if I can stop on a prime number, that always feels
good.
Special. I mean, does it mean that you end up kind of 11 or 13 Bourbons? But
that's fine with me.
Gemma's on the floor by then. Just one more.
The only thing with that is I dunk mine into tea. So by the 13th biscuit, your tea might be getting a little bit cold.
Well, the tea is just really
saying.
there as a gesture or like a reason to just start the eating of the biscuit. It doesn't necessarily mean the tea gets finished. It's sort of like it would be rude not to, you know, to
It's
just
true.
dig in.
And I drop biscuits in my tea all of the time.
Oh, yummy.
I don't know whether I should say this on the pod, and you can obviously cut this out if it needs to.
Now it's staying in.
We'll see what it is first.
This is how close I have once hoovered biscuit crumbs off Ash.
Oh my god! You remember that? Oh, please tell that story. This is staying in. Oh my god!
I don't know this story. What happened?
Oh my god! Please tell this story.
So we were around at our mutual friend Rachel's house, and Ash must have been. You were 8 months. It was you post 8 months pregnant with your 2 lovely boys, and you were just absolutely worn out. And I was there, and you and Rach, as you did this before you were even like pregnant, would just sit on the sofa and be like, oh, let's just be comfortable. So I wasn't there. So I was like, I'll go and make you a cup of tea and bring you some biscuits. Not my house, but fine. You guys were just there, just nattering away for ages. I came, gave them stuff. And Ash was like, oh, this is the best. I've not stopped, honestly, for ages. And then she just looked down and went, oh, and it's just had, largely she's like, I've got crumbs all over me. And there's crumbs all over the floor. And I was like, oh, there's Rachel's small little like vacuum hoover. I'll just clean up the floor. And then I said as a joke, I was like, oh, I can just hoover you. And Ash just went,
yeah.
You know what? I can't even be bothered to stand up and not just hoover me. And then so I ended up just literally, she kind of just like buttoned like her t-shirt down, and I just ended up bringing this hoover up and down.
Oh, it was so pregnant. It was so hard. It was the best day ever. I got to eat, and you hoovered the crumbs off me.
And honestly, when I finished hoover, I've never seen anyone seem more relieved. It was almost like you'd been to like a bar or something else. You just so relaxed. You went.
Oh, I know. It was like I didn't have to try and stand up. I didn't have to try and apologize over the crumbs. I mean, I couldn't even. I don't even know how I sat down. Let alone stand up. Anyway, oh, I have such a happy memory for that. That was the best. That's someone's your good friend because they're like, "Will I just hoover you?" Okay.
That's 2 people that have done night shifts together. That's how you know.
That's just somebody who knows how to look after somebody. That was just incredibly sweet.
That's a great story. I didn't know that story.
Yeah. I actually forgot about that. Oh, that was really nice. Happy days. Anyway, okay. This is not a quick fire round.
I know. Tea or coffee? Tea or coffee?
Tea on a shift, coffee before a shift.
Okay. Snow, yes or no?
Yes, now that I don't have to really forecast it.
Okay. Crisps or chocolate?
Chocolate.
Okay. Fingers for toes or toes for fingers?
Fingers for toes.
Okay. And then just the final one.
I know what that is. I had to get somebody to explain it to me.
On one of the podcasts, we had to explain to Ash. She was a little bit confused about. We could see her trying to work out what was going on.
What does that even mean?
And one last thing is one thing you wish everyone knew about the weather.
I think just how beautiful it really is. I feel like it's a thing that sometimes when you learn a subject and you kind of like learn more about it, you go and you see the nuts and bolts behind it, and you go, oh, I kind of know the science behind it now. But kind of as a mathematician, that the more science you know and the more kind of in depth in South Korea, it just makes it even more beautiful, and it makes it, you just see the randomness in it, with also the structure and the kind of chaotic nature, but also the order. I think, yeah, just the true beauty of how the weather really is.
That's
Good
very
answer.
yeah, it's very philosophical. It is true though, the physics involved in modeling the weather, just, and also as like going forward, we've got like ocean atmospheric coupled models, and we now know actually it's becoming more and more important to understand more about the stratosphere, the mesosphere, the ionosphere, and the global teleconnections. It's fascinating. It is beautiful. That is a lovely description of that. That's made me very happy. I've got a big smile on my face now. I have left this podcast loving the weather even more.
Mission accomplished.
Yes, mission accomplished. Right, and so we're going to leave now with actually some weather wisdom. We should get to the end of the podcast, otherwise I suspect this conversation may go on for a lot longer.
Hours. It was hours.
I must apologize. Whenever me and Gemma were on shift, we did get told off quite a lot for how much we used to talk.
Oh, that's how you get through it.
We did our work as well. I just want to point it out. We did do our work.
Yeah.
Forecast never went out late.
Also, Gemma types like she's fake typing. It sounds like it when you're typing on the keyboard, like it's not real.
Because I type so fast.
Yeah. But, so it's like if you didn't hear, you think she was in a movie just going, actually, she is typing. Anyway, we were going to leave
always got some sort of spelling mistake in it, though. So I always have to go back and check it. But
that's why it's terrible when software, well, not so much now, didn't have spell check in it.
Oh, no.
Oh, not good, especially on a night shift. Right, we're going to do a little bit of weather wisdom. I'm going to explain raining cats and dogs. So there's actually quite a couple of explanations for where this first started appearing and where the expression came. One of them actually comes from the Greek expression kata doxa, which means contrary to experience or belief. So raining cats and dogs, like you wouldn't believe how heavy it was raining. So that's one of them. Another one I like is that back in ye old times, whenever that is, when the thatch roofs were around, animals would often shelter in the roofs. And if they were made well, they'd probably, the roof would stay dry, and so would the dwelling as well. But if it rained really, really heavy, if the thatch wasn't made very well, the chances are animals would actually come out of the roof. And so it looked like it was raining cats and dogs, but also that it was probably a really heavy spell of rain and that the house wasn't waterproof. So there are two of them. There is actually more of them, but they're my two favorites. So that is our weather wisdom for this week.
But we won't say a massive, massive thank you, Chris, for joining us
today.
Thanks,
Chris, and also bringing us down memory lane.
Yeah,
it's always fun hanging out with you two and talking about the weather.
Thanks.
Enjoy about
you can join me on my next night shift if you were like. I'll have you on Zoom in the corner.
No.
I'll have you on Zoom. I'll be typing away very fast. But we want to thank you, Chris. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for listening. We hope you leave this episode loving the weather just that little bit more. Also, if you want to subscribe to the podcast, you can follow us, subscribe to us on the podcast listening channel so that you never miss an episode. You can also follow us on social media. On Instagram, we are For the Love of Weather. And on Twitter, we are the number 4. This didn't go down too well when we were picking out the names, but only one available. It's the number 4 Love of Weather. That's where you'll find us on Twitter.
Yeah, but
we'll try and put it in the description of the podcast as well so people can follow us. But come along. We have quizzes. We share various weather wisdoms during the week as well. You'll have a great time.
We just love talking about the weather. And we, like Gemma always says, we hope that you love the weather just a little bit more after listening to this and that you've learned a little bit something as well. But thank you very much for listening, Chris. Thank you so much. And until next time, thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.